Joining me to talk a little bit more about this Phil's doubleheader split with the Cardinals and kind of where we stand here now as we are officially in mid-May is Jeff Kerr. He's an outstanding writer for CBS Sports Philadelphia, covers the Phillies for them, also does a lot of Eagles stuff too. He's got a bunch of stuff on the schedules that just got released, so if you're into that sort of thing, make sure to check out all of Jeff's work too on the Birds. But for CBS Sports Philadelphia, and writes for CBS Sports for the NFL on the NFL side of things too, so that's where you can catch his football stuff. But Jeff joining us talk a little Phillies baseball here on Hittin Season. Jeff, welcome to the show. I don't have your socials pulled up in front of me. If people want to see everything you're doing, where do they go on the socials, man?
So you can find me at Jeff Kerr CBS on X or Twitter, if you still call it Twitter, or Instagram. I don't post as much on my Instagram. It's mostly, I don't post my stats and facts on there. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that's not the medium for it. You got to be a picture taker to be really good on the gram, which I'm trying to get better at with video clips and stuff like that. But it's time consuming when you've got a full-time job and a family and a house to take. It's just there's a lot going on.
It's funny. I tell the content creators all the time, I'm like, I'm glad you guys have time to do this, but you're also not writing stories. You're not doing this. So it's just a different medium.
It's a different medium, and it takes a full-time person to really knock all that stuff out. It really does. Well, as we enter the weekend here, the Phillies have an off day on Thursday, and then they're going to welcome the Pirates to Citizens Bank Park, so it should be a weekend for them to get well and win a few games, win another series. But they come in to Thursday 2.5 games behind the Mets for first place in the National League East after splitting a doubleheader against the Cardinals. Their first series loss since that sweep at the hands of the Mets at Citi Field back in mid to late April. So they had been on a good little run here, Jeff. They've been playing better baseball. The Cardinals look like they're going to be a better team this year. They've been hot. They were red hot coming into Philadelphia, and the Phillies split the doubleheader, lose 2 out of 3. Really, it was disappointing in that in the second game of the doubleheader, which is I think where a lot of our attention is focused, you get that 5-run first inning, that 5-1 lead. You hand it to Aaron Nola, who had been pitching really well coming into the start on Wednesday night, and it just blew up on him. He didn't seem, nothing was sharp. His fastball velocity wasn't where you want it to be. And after looking great against 2 really good offenses in the Cubs and the Diamondbacks, he had no answers for the Cardinals. They almost looked like they knew what was coming, Jeff. So really a disappointing loss in getting that first inning lead. And then watching Aaron Nola, supposedly one of your best starting pitchers, just yak it up.
Yeah, John, it was frustrating for sure. I remember when they're up 5-1, I'm like, okay, well, they're going to win another series. This is going to be a really impressive doubleheader sweep against a team that, quite frankly, just had their number pitching the offense. And, to win that series would have been massive for them. And look, they're still playing well, but just seeing Nola, the fastball was flat. Mm-hmm. There was no movement on the breaking balls. It's just like everything happened to him in that third inning, and he just couldn't get out of it. And I don't blame Rob Thompson for keeping him in there because he had to pitch. You used all your guns in pretty much the first game, and you don't want to pitch a Ryan Kirkring and Jose Alvarado in both games. It made a lot of sense to do that. Maybe he should have got Taijuan Walker up earlier, but I think at that point the damage was done.
Yeah, and I know people have been critical of Rob Thompson for that move. I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the podcast. Initially, at first blush, you're like, yeah, he has nothing today. Why are you sending? I mean, Kyle Schwarber does a great job hitting that home run in the bottom of the third to kind of grab a little momentum back. And you could kind of feel like, okay, we kind of stopped the bleeding. We put a Band-Aid on that, and now we can, it almost felt like, okay, new game, which made it feel like, okay, new pitcher. You needed a new arm there, and it felt like a good time to bring in Walker or Carlos Hernandez or Joe Ross or somebody like that. But he wanted to try and get Aaron Nola through those right-handers. And the other thing I'll defend Rob Thompson on with that, we've seen Aaron Nola have a blow-up inning like that and then recover and pitch 2 or 3 shutout innings after that. I think it was reasonable for Thompson to think maybe I can get him through this 4th inning, get him through those right-handers. Again, we just played a 9-inning game earlier in the afternoon. You have to be judicious with the bullpen. Everybody's going to get used today. So let me see if I can't get another couple of outs from Aaron Nola. And really, a couple of those hits in the 4th inning were infield hits. Hits, weak contact, you really should be able to kind of turn those into outs most of the time. So, yeah, I'm not killing Rob Thompson for leaving Aaron Nola in. The bigger question is, what's going on with Aaron Nola? He looked awful at the beginning of the season. definitely picked it up. 4 starts after that, looked really effective. But he didn't pitch great last week against the Guardians, but before that looked really great. And then this blow up here on Wednesday night. It's just, I think that's the nature of Aaron Nola that frustrates fans so much, is you don't know what you're going to get. More so than maybe any other pitcher we've seen from this franchise in a long, long time. You just don't know what Aaron Nola is going to show up on a nightly basis, and it's disconcerting. Because the uncertainty hangs in the air there.
Oh, I agree. I don't think we've had this type of you don't know what you're going to get since Jamie Moyer was here. And Jamie Moyer was in his mid-40s when he was here, so I always cut him a break there.
Right.
If Jamie Moyer didn't get the corners, he wasn't pitching well. It feels like that with Aaron Nola right now. And he's not getting paid what Jamie Moyer was getting paid, and he's a lot younger than Jamie Moyer. This is a guy that is in year 2 of a 7-year contract, which I justified them bringing him back because of all the innings he pitched and how durable he was and everything else. He's still durable, but my buddy pointed this out last night in our group chat. Every time we talk about the Phillies, and it's not getting frustrations out. It's just talking about the game in real time. Like, pretty much we're just not doing it on social media, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a shame Aaron Nola had to waste all those good years throwing 200 innings and just getting people out on bad baseball teams. And now they're good and it hurts. And I think people don't look at it that way because they view Aaron Nola as, you were the good player on the bad team, so therefore you're bad. And I don't think that's fair to him. But it's hard to defend the guy right now because, we were talking about before the show. Okay, he struggles when Rafael Marchand catches him. Well, he picked JT last night, so he got the night game. That was his choice. The veteran always gets the choice. So that's out. The Phillies don't score runs for him. Well, they scored 5 for him. He was up 5-1. They ended up scoring, I think it was 7 for him. So, overall, when you paint that picture, this is on Aaron Nola.
Yeah. And there's a couple of questions there, and we don't know the answers to these questions. It doesn't sound like he does either. He just kind of was chucking, everything went wrong, and there's clearly his stuff wasn't great last night, and that happens to pitchers. Sometimes you don't have your good stuff. But it's been enough of an issue this year where he's had some outings where he's been overtly hittable, and then other outings where it's not. It feels mechanical to me, or it feels like he's tipping pitches. One of those two things is coming up because we've seen that a disturbance in your mechanics can affect your velocity. It certainly can affect movement. It certainly can affect command. So I'm not trying to sound the alarm on Aaron Nola. I remember in 2023, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast as well. He struggled the whole year, especially from the stretch. And it was because he was looking at the wrong pitch clock on the wrong side of home plate as he was getting used to that.
And he openly admitted that too.
Yeah. And he fixed that problem. And now there's probably he's got a lot going on in his movement. He's got a kind of a hitch in the leg kick, the arm whiplashes. I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong in Aaron Nola's delivery. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they find something in his mechanics that's making him inconsistent from start to start. So this is not a thing where we're bailing on Aaron Nola. There's still a recognition he's a very good pitcher. But right now, Jeff, and the season doesn't end today, the playoffs don't start tomorrow, but if they did, Aaron Nola doesn't make a postseason start for this team, I don't think. I don't think he's one of the 4 best pitchers on this team right now. He's certainly not one of the top 3, and I don't know that I would start Aaron Nola over Ranger Suarez in a game right now. It'd be a coin flip for me.
Oh, I agree with you. So if you're going based on the rotation, it's Wheeler, Luzardo. I mean, that's your top 2 right there, right?
Yeah.
And
then
like
Sanchez.
Yeah, and then Sanchez. And they love Sanchez. So there's your 3. And then if there's a game 4, you go Aaron Nola and his postseason experience, or you go Ranger Suarez and his postseason experience. I'd be tempted to go Ranger Suarez right now. I wouldn't go Aaron Nola. And that's a lot of money to give to a guy who's not pitching in the postseason. But I agree with you. As of what's today, John? May 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would not be pitching in the postseason. Now, granted, he's still got 4 months to figure this thing out.
Right.
He could clearly turn it around. But it's a very good one of those, like, we live in a society where we want instant analysis and instant gratification. So, yeah, this is a good topic right now if you had to pick. And I'm the same way with center field right now. Honestly, I know I don't want to change topic, but I would play Johan Rojas over Brandon Marsh right now. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. And there's, again, you're right. Things can change. We're literally 6-7 weeks into the season. It's a long season. We're just over a quarter of the season having been played right now. So time for Aaron Nola to turn it around. I do want to talk to you about Luzardo, who pitched the first game of the doubleheader. It does seem unfortunate and unfair that we don't really talk a whole lot about him because he's just been a machine to start off this season. But another outstanding outing from him in the first game of this doubleheader shut down a really good Cardinals lineup for 7 innings. And it's just, he's done it all season long. Every single start, he goes out there, he goes 6, he goes 7, like no more than 2 runs. I think he's given up 3 runs in a game once this year. Everything has been 2 runs or less. And he's developed a new pitch since coming to Philadelphia. The sweeper that he's got has made his other stuff play up. He's throwing harder than he ever has before. Something about coming to the Phillies. These guys learn new pitches and develop. Caleb Cottom and this development team doesn't get enough credit for how they are adding to these young pitchers' arsenals, like they did with Christopher Sanchez, like they did with Jeff Hoffman and some other players. Jesus Luzardo right now, I don't know if he's the leading candidate for the Cy Young, but he's the leading Phillies candidate for Cy Young right now, and that's on a team featuring a still great Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, Jesus Luzardo has been incredible. And I remember when they traded for him, it was the Sunday the Eagles were playing the Commanders in December, the game Jalen Hurts got hurt and Jaden Daniels threw 5 touchdown passes. And I just remember I was at the Eagles game, getting ready for that, and I got the text message from the Phillies that they traded for him. And I was like, hold on, this is like a massive move. Like, this is a great move. And you gave up a Starling Kaba for him. And I felt that trade was going to be worth it. You do that trade 10 times out of 10. I'm like, man, you get him Caleb Cop, and all of a sudden, this guy's going to be a really good pitcher. And he already was a really good pitcher. He just got injured a lot. He has been incredible. Like, if you had to pick all-stars on the Phillies right now, he's the first guy you think of. And it's not Zach Wheeler. And Zach Wheeler's had a great year. I mean, this is it. He honestly, right now, he's not the ace of the staff, but he's pitching like the ace of the staff. And I knew that I had a really good feeling they were going to split the doubleheader yesterday because Jesus Luzardo was pitching, and he's striking guys out. He's not walking a lot of guys. He's not wild. He has a really good repertoire with whether it's either JT or Rafael Marchand. And you know what, John? Just from talking to him, he's a great guy too. Like he's a legit dude. He loves baseball. He's very excited to be here. I think he admired the Phillies from afar, and now he's here. And I would not be shocked if this guy got a contract extension before the All-Star break.
I said the same thing. I said a month ago, it wouldn't at all surprise me if Luzardo gets a contract extension before Kyle Schwarber or before JT Realmuto, given how he's playing, his youth, and his importance to the team. Because I absolutely think they should. I think that would make the most sense. Lock in your top 4 guys, for forever, because Ranger Suarez is not going to be one of them. And then you slide Andrew Painter in. I mean, Aaron Nola is going to be here no matter how he pitches. He's not going anywhere. So I would lock up Jesus Luzardo and make sure that he does not go anywhere. And you have some time on that because he's not a free agent until after next season, right? They have him for this year and next year. So there's still time on that. But if you do it now, you might be able to get it at a little bit of a cheaper price than if you waited until his contract year, which they've decided to wait for Schwarber.
John, it's funny, like, how we spent like the first 10 minutes of the show complaining about Aaron Nola. But you got Zach Wheeler, who's still pitching well in his mid-30s, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo. I don't think they're going to bring back Ranger Suarez, but it is what it is. And you got Andrew Painter and Mick Abel pretty much in your pipeline right now. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about is Andrew Painter they're building him up in AAA. He's going to, in his next outing, which is Thursday night, he's going to get up to about 75 pitches. They eventually want to get him up to 100 pitches before they call him up. But it sounds as though we're on track for him to be at least physically ready for a call up by June at some point next month. He should get to 100 pitches by that point. We'll kind of have a better idea how this rotation looks in another 3 weeks or a month or so. But even if Aaron Nola continues to struggle or so, I don't know. What do you do? How does the Andrew Painter thing work? Because you have 5 established starters. It seems to me you can either go to a modified 6-man rotation where Zach Wheeler stays on his 5th day because he doesn't like to change. He doesn't want to go to a 6-man rotation, but maybe everybody else goes to 6 days, a 6-man rotation and pitch every 6th day. You bump one of those guys to the bullpen. And that'd probably be Ranger. You make Andrew Painter a reliever, but that's not going to happen. For anybody who's calling for Painter to be a reliever for reasons I've laid out numerous times before, he's not going to the bullpen or a trade, which again doesn't happen right away. But maybe in June, it's more likely you can trade somebody. Which of those 4 options do you think is most likely, and when do you think we see Painter?
I think we are going to see a 6-man rotation. Just talking to people, it feels like it's going to be a 6-man rotation, but you're right. Wheeler doesn't like that, and I listen to the ace. So, yeah, you do that modified 6-man rotation, you figure it out from there. It's a good problem to have. I don't see Ranger going to the bullpen right away because I think, one, his agent is not going to let him.
Right, he's in a contract year. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who don't know, his agent is Scott Bars now. So that's not going to happen. Look, you already kind of pushed Taijuan Walker to the bullpen and he barely pitches. He's been pitching well.
Yeah.
So you can't really do that. Look, they could kind of, if Aaron Nola is struggling in June, July, I still think it's going to be late June, early July when Andrew Painter comes up. If Nola is still struggling, you could kind of say, hey, you know what? Let's get this thing right. You got 2 or 3 weeks and you come back after the All-Star break. You could kind of push that, and then you really go in that modified 6-man rotation. But look, I don't know what changed over the past 3 weeks, but just from talking to people about Andrew Painter, and I'm pretty in the know when it comes to this guy. I like to think I am anyway. I always thought it was going to be like, oh, okay, the guy pitches 4 or 5 innings, and then they call it a day because they want to limit his innings to 140 or whatever it is, because that's always the number I heard, and that's including the postseason. But then when you look at like his numbers, it's not even close to 140. So I guess they figure we can stretch him out a bit. And for all that bullpen talk, John, I agree with you 100%. You ain't seeing Andrew Painter pitch in the bullpen, if at all, until the postseason.
Yeah. Well, and there's a reason for that, for people who are wondering why that is. First of all, when you're building up to 100 pitches, that's counterproductive. But he's a young arm. He's coming off Tommy John surgery, and there is a way that as a relief pitcher you have to warm up fast. You have to get hot fast. You have to kind of be constantly warming up during the course of a game, or just being ready. And for a 21-year-old coming off Tommy John surgery, the last thing you want is for him to push himself to get ready for a high-pressure situation fast. Like, he needs a long build-up. He needs like a half hour, hour-long, whatever it is, warm-up to start a game. You're not going to ask him to suddenly to warm up in a way he's never done before, a high-stress way of warming up, when you've got a 21-year-old future Garrett Cole-like talent sitting there. You're not risking that, especially since he just came off of Tommy John surgery. So for anybody thinking like, oh, just make him pitch in the bullpen, like the way you get ready as a reliever would be exceedingly risky to his health to go that direction.
I agree. And look, just talking to guys in the Phillies bullpen, like, dude, like, you have to have like a sixth sense of, okay, I'm going to be pitching.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know that. You don't know if you're going to pitch 2 days in a row. You don't know if sometimes you're going to pitch 3 days in a row. Really, Alvarado's the only one who does that. And I don't think they like him doing that either. And look, I got to give Rob Thompson a ton of credit here. Last year, I thought he overexposed a lot of this starting rotation, letting him pitch deep in the game. The Phillies have a lot of guys who pitch in the 7th inning, but you ever realize, like, it doesn't matter if they're cruising after the 7th, they're not pitching the 8th.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Or, like, everybody's concerned about Jose Alvarado pitching as much as he has, myself included. But then he only pitches, like, twice over the past, like, 10 days. It's like, they have a calculated approach to how this thing works. And I think that's how they're getting a Ryan Kerkering back on track. It's like, okay, maybe we used him a little too much, and maybe that's why his sweeper's dying, or maybe we're not throwing the fastball and cutter enough of him. By the way, he's developed that pitch. Let's give him a little bit of a break. And all of a sudden, he comes out yesterday, and he I had that gut feeling he was going to get out of that yesterday just from talking to him on Monday. It just felt like, okay, like, this guy's fresh. Like, you could tell he's in a different mindset. It's he remembered how to get major league guys out. And, I got to give credit to how the Phillies, I don't know how the Phillies calculate this stuff, but I gotta give credit to how they're handling this season. Like, I know people are mad they're not sweeping series, but they're winning a lot of series just like they did last year. They're just not. I think people got way too caught up in this historic 29-6 pace they went on last year. I'm like, guys, this hasn't happened since 1892. You know this, right? This doesn't happen. Like, I said they could go 500 the rest of the season. They're going to win 97 games, and they pretty much did. So, I just don't think people understand how a baseball season works sometimes.
Yeah, no, and we're very football mentality, but we also have 3 podcasts a week here to do, so we tend to react.
Hey, John, you're allowed to be overreacted because your overreactions actually make sense.
Okay. Well, then, they're mid reactions. Then I'll
I'm always like when I see you, I'm like, I can get by that. I can get beyond that.
Last thing for you here, and it's kind of tangentially Phillies related, but Commissioner Rob Manfred announced this week that Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson and other players who were on the permanent ineligibility list would be removed from that list after they died. And so any future player that's placed on the ineligible list for their career, once they have died, they'll be taken off that list, which would make them eligible for the Hall of Fame. Obviously, I think talking about Pete Rose is the third rail of baseball conversation. There's a pro Pete Rose contingent and an anti Pete Rose contingent. Both of them have very strong arguments. Both of them are, I think, if you're talking about just a baseball player, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think anybody questions that. No one has any doubt that if it was just based on accomplishments on the field alone, Pete Rose is a surefire, no doubt Hall of Famer. But I know there's a lot of people who bristle at people telling them what it is about Pete Rose's personal life, his gambling, all that kind of stuff. Why should that affect whether or not he's in Cooperstown? I'm one of those people, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeff, who I would vote in all the performance enhancing drug people: Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, all those guys. I'm in the
same boat, I think.
I say get it, let them get in. If you want to create a PED wing of Cooperstown, I think that's fine. But I look at the Baseball Hall of Fame as a history museum, and to not have some of the guys whose contributions shaped the game, they were the most important players of their generations, for them not to be in the Hall of Fame doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. It'd be like keeping out important parts of World War II from the World War II museum that you didn't like for various reasons. That being said, as far as Pete Rose is concerned, when it comes to the gambling stuff, it was obviously awful. He should never have done it. The 15 years he spent denying it, saying it was no big deal, were a huge mistake. Obviously, everybody knows that he did it and that he was lying, and that really soured the milk when it came to Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. As far as the gambling stuff goes, I would still let him in, and I would lay it all bare, right? Put all the cards on the table. Here's what he did. Here's what he said, all this kind of stuff. But I'd have his plaque there. It's the sexual misconduct, the sexual allegations of his relationship with a 16-year-old, age of consent in Ohio or not. You know, she could, the unidentified woman who filed this affidavit years ago claimed that she was 15 when they began their sexual relationship.
And wasn't he married too when he was doing this?
In his 30s, married with 2 children. I know there have been a litany of ball players who I'm sure were not faithful to their wives who are in the Hall of Fame. And that's the argument that you get from people who say his personal life shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not he's in the Hall of Fame. But this doesn't have to do with personal life. This has to do with a crime, right? That it seems as though there's a good possibility that he committed. And maybe the question then becomes, I would not favor him being in the Hall of Fame for that reason. I just couldn't. I don't think he should have the honor, just like I don't think O.J. Simpson should be in the Hall of Fame for being accused of murder and the trial and everything that went with it and everything we found out about him afterwards. Like, I don't know where the line is when it comes to what a player has done off the field, whether that impacts an on-field honor that they should have. And I understand it moves for a lot of people. A lot of people have a different goalpost and where it should be. That's where mine is. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
This is why I am such an historian, and I don't like to say opinions too much, especially like with Pete Rose, because I'm getting tired of the whole, oh, well, you're for this or you're for... No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Right.
And look, this is what I like to tell the pro and the anti-Pete Rose people. Go look up Ty Cobb and go look up Cap Atson sometime.
Yeah.
Like, they've been
Bad
in the
guys.
Hall of Fame for like 100 years. And they're bad people. Pete Rose is a bad person. You can admit that. But on-field accomplishments, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't. By the way, I'm getting tired of this argument too. The only reason he's the all-time hit king because he played 30 years. Yeah, that's usually how you become the all-time. Like, how do you think LeBron is the all-time points leader in basketball? Because he played a long time. It's not a deterrent to play a long time in the sport. It's not. And look, do I think he should be in? Yeah, for on-field stuff in baseball? Yes. Obviously, and look, I really got upset at the people getting upset at the Phillies because they made a statement. And this is all I gotta say. I'm like, look, you weren't the people making this comment. I wasn't born in 1980. I was born in 88. But I can tell you what Pete Rose meant to my dad, to my grandpa, and they think my grandpa's been dead for 20 years. If he knew what Pete Rose did, he would tell you he's a bad person. But what that guy did for that franchise and winning a World Series, the Phillies are going to make a statement. Because the Phillies were the losingest franchise you could ever imagine. They went 96 years before they won a championship. They went... When did they win their first playoff game? 76? So they went 90 years before they won a playoff game. Think about that.
It wasn't 76. They didn't win a playoff game in 76. They got swept by the Reds.
That's right. They got swept in 77.
77. They won their. They won a game. No, they got swept in the 50 World Series by the Yankees.
Yeah, that's right. They won a game in 15. That's right.
They won a game in 15, and then it was 1977 in the NLCS against the Dodgers before they won another playoff game.
Yeah, that's what I said. This fan base could never, like these people on social media today could never in a million years root for a franchise that were just dreck for like ever. They couldn't do it. I don't care. You're a Phillies fan, you're an Eagles fan. You know, our parents growing up, being Eagles fans, right?
Me growing up as an Eagles fan, man.
Exactly. You saw bad.
I grew up in the Buddy Ryan era. Come on.
Exactly. You saw bad football in the 90s, right? My dad does not remember a winning season for the Eagles until 1978. He was born in 56. Think about that. Like, these people couldn't do it. They think the Sam Bradford year is like the worst year they've ever had.
Right.
It's like, come on. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, my whole Pete Rose opinion is like, look, technically he kind of is in the Hall of Fame because his jersey is in there. So it's there. It's in the museum. It exists. He's the all-time hit
There's
king.
There's a whole thing set up to him breaking Ty Cobb's hits record. Like they've got a whole section there.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people, go to Cooperstown. You're going to find a lot of stuff that you'd be shocked that's in there, right? But that's part of the history of the game. But I think you can't tell the whole story of this guy. Look, if you want to write on his plaque the bad things he did, I'm all for that. Especially with the gambling, because it did involve on-field stuff. But I also think we're in the world now where you see, the NFL game sponsored by FanDuel, sponsored by DraftKings.
The gambling stuff, you don't lose me with the being upset about the gambling stuff now when everything's sponsored by an online gambling site. That's why I'm with the gambling. No, sorry. Yeah, lose me with that.
I got really upset the day Alex Coffey asked him about what happened and his response. I'm like, dude, come on, Pete. That ain't it. And you can't call her what you call her. Like, I know that was acceptable back in the 60s and 70s. You're in 2020 now. I think that was 2018 that happened?
It was 22 because it was a celebration of the 1980 World Series, but they had to postpone it a couple of years because of COVID.
Yeah, that's right. I remember when Pete Rose was supposed to get inducted in the Wall of Fame, I went in 17 and because all this stuff happened, it's like, I think that's what a lot of the Pete Rose defenders get mad about. It's not that it happened. It's the timing of when it happened. And I think that's what makes it, but that's part of the story. And like, look, it's weird because I'm with you, John. I think you should put Mark McGwire. I think you should put Sammy Sosa. I think you should put Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and a lot of these guys in because look, baseball was making money off these guys for years and years and years, and they looked the other way and they saved the game. I don't care what anybody says. They saved baseball.
They did.
As a kid, that's what got people back. It was, and I always grew up a baseball fan. The Phillies were terrible, but I thought it was really cool seeing the guy that one of the first names I remember in baseball was Mark McGwire, and he was a really good player for the Athletics at the time. But seeing him just hit home run after home run after home run. And baseball made a big deal. Anybody remember September 8th, 1998? That's just one of those days you remember where you were when Mark McGwire hit that home run.
Yep.
It just is. And the fact that baseball now tries to act like these guys are the worst people in the world, it sickens me. And I think that's why people are getting turned off baseball, because you were basically lied to all these years. And now you embrace gambling, and you embrace this, and you embrace that, and you shun Pete Rose for you. And Pete Rose did a lot of this to himself. But it's just a convoluted mess, honestly. And I don't think baseball's ever going to recover for it, because there's too many guys that are your age and are my age that remember this stuff.
Well, I'll say I think the sport is I think the sport is really healthy. It may not be as popular as it was in the 80s,
but you're right though. Like it's just the stuff from the 90s and 2000s we keep our head on. But you're right. The sport itself is in good shape.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, there's certainly no shortage of discussions, and the earliest that Rose and Shoeless Joe and others could be on the Hall of Fame ballot is 2028. They could get in with a special Veterans Committee meeting in 2027, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm skeptical. I don't think I think Shoeless Joe will get in. I don't think Pete Rose will get in.
And you know, did you ever read about Shoeless Joe and all that stuff? Did you ever read
a little bit here and there? But
yeah, it's crazy. Like I feel like there's more of a case. Actually, it's a pretty strong case for Shoeless Joe that he's innocent. Like, I don't, like, even if he was involved, you just don't not hit, like, 380 in a series.
Yeah.
Like, there were pitchers that tanked in that series.
No.
But I just feel like Shoeless Joe was one of those guys, like, he knew about. It's a shame, like, and, you know, again, history buff here. I'm obsessed with Titanic-related stuff, right? I just am. The fact that people don't know the entire story of that is incredible. Like, I just found an article the other day because it was like, it was an anniversary or something, right? They found, I don't know if you're deep into like the Titanic stuff.
No, I'm not.
But okay, so they found, there were a bunch of lifeboats on Titanic, obviously, as you know. But they found collapsible boat A, which was one of the lifeboats. This is from an article from 1912. It was a month after. There were 5 dead bodies on it, all frozen. It washed up the shore. Keep in mind, shore was 200 miles away from where the accident happened. And you're like, there's so much stuff people don't know about, just like Shoeless Joe. And we just don't have the access to it.
Right.
So,
yeah, well, it's why the Hall can tell the whole story if they're in there. But again, it certainly is the I think we kind of hit on why it's the third rail of baseball discussion. But
I'll say this, John. If I had a vote for Pete Rose, I vote him for on field, but I'll just say this. I think I would say no just because it's too controversial. And look, at the end of the day, you're right. The Veterans Committee is the one going to make this. All Rob Manfred did was basically just remove the deceased players from the ineligible list.
Right. The baseball writers aren't going to. He may get on the ballot, but the baseball writers are not going to vote for him.
But by the way, are you one of those people like? Do you think it's like? I think Pete Rose just died, but don't you think it's like? I don't know. I don't know how to word it, but kind of crappy. Like all of a sudden they want to do this, or do you think that was planned?
I think it was planned.
I think it was planned too.
Yeah. No, I think Rob Manfred thought it would be more palatable once Pete Rose had died, that people might be more on board with putting him in the Hall of Fame if it meant that he didn't get to receive all of the glow and the attention and being able to make a speech at Cooperstown and all that kind of stuff. I think that would have left a bitter taste on a lot of people's mouths. I think waiting until he's passed and doing it posthumously avoids Pete Rose being able to say, I'm a Hall of Famer, but it does immortalize him. But let's be honest, Pete Rose is already immortalized in ways good and bad. So, you know, the only people who wouldn't know the full story of Pete Rose is if 100 years from now an alien species came down and went to the Baseball Hall of Fame and was looking at Pete Rose and like, who is this person? So I don't know. This is not an easy question. It's not an easy case. And I take issue with people who think it is open and shut, but we'll leave that for another day, Jeff. In the meantime, make sure you're following everything Jeff is doing over at CBS Sports. Great Phillies stuff, great Eagles stuff, terrific follow. And I'll always love having him on the show. Jeff, thanks for coming on Hittin' Season. Appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me on, John.